In order to determine the current firmware that's in your ScanNCut, go to the ScanNCut and from the home screen, click on the little wrench that's on the lower left side of the panel. And there you come to a page that has all the different things you can do to set up your ScanNCut. And go to page 5. And you'll notice there that you see the serial number of the ScanNCut and the current version of the firmware. In the case of my ScanNCut, I'm at version 2.01, and the most up-to-date firmware is 2.32. So I definitely need to update the ScanNCut. So my next step will be to go to the computer and download the latest firmware and then bring it back down to the ScanNCut and update it. So now that I know that the ScanNCut needs the firmware update, I can go to the computer and download it from the Brother website. The easiest way to get there is just type ScanNCut.com, and it'll take us to a Brother page that's a subpage of the Brother website that has to do with the ScanNCut. And there is a page about the ScanNCut, and there's a lot of nice information on this page, including some tips and tricks, some FAQs, some project ideas. But what we're interested in today is the firmware update. So down here in the lower left corner of the screen is the firmware update button, and if we click on that, we'll get taken to a screen where we can tell Brother what our model of our ScanNCut is. And if you remember, we looked on the silver little sticker on the back of the ScanNCut, and it's the CM650W. Search for that. And there's a picture of the ScanNCut, and there's an opportunity if we typed it in wrong, that it's the wrong product, we can fix that. But down here are some tabs associated with the ScanNCut 650. And what we're interested in is the downloads on the Online Solution Center. So we can click on that. And now a Brother wants to know what our operating system is and what version of the operating system we're running. I am running Windows 10, and so I have those little radio buttons clicked. But you could be running Windows 8 or 8.1 or Windows 7, or hopefully you're not running Windows Vista, but if you are, you can download the driver for that as well. So now we search. The search for the Windows 10 software has brought us to this page, and on this page you'll notice that there's two applications available for the ScanNCut. One is the update software, which is what we're really interested in, but there's also a utility called the ScanNCut type converter, which allows you to create cut data from tube type fonts. This sounds like a pretty interesting idea that we might investigate at a different day, but for today let's just click on the update software link, and we'll be taken to another page that has a little bit more information about the update that we're going to download, including the update history, which will give you some information about what has been updated on this last firmware update, some notes before downloading that you may want to take a look at. And finally, we have to agree to the end user licensing agreement in order to start the download. So we click on the blue button, which agrees to the EULA and starts the download, and you'll notice the download starting down here. I have my computer set up so that it automatically tries to save the downloads, and normally it would save it to a download directory on my computer, but right now I have it redirected to the USB stick, which is where I want the update to go. And so this is the file name. It's a .upf file, which is what ScanNCut needs to update the firmware. It's going to my USB drive, and I just click Save. You may have to adjust that window a little bit depending on what your USB stick is called and how you normally accept downloads. This is a very small file, and it does not take very long to load. So now that it is loaded and it's saved onto the USB stick, we're ready to go to the ScanNCut and update the firmware. In the meantime, if you want, you can take a look at this page and look at a little bit more information on how to check the software version of your machine, which was the first part of this video, and then how to update the software. It's some written instructions here, which will be the next part of the video that I'll show you shortly. So we're ready to go down to the ScanNCut with our USB stick and update the firmware. So now I'm back down at the ScanNCut, and I have the USB stick that has the firmware update on it. I'm going to insert that into the ScanNCut in the USB port on the side,
And then I'm going to turn the machine on in such a way as to accept the firmware update. If your machine is already turned on when you put the USB stick in, turn it off before you try to load it. In order to load the firmware, you have to press the load mat button down at the same time as the power button for a brief second until you see that white screen. Once you see that white screen, you're going to be ready to load the update from the USB stick. You also have the option of loading the firmware update from a computer, which is the icon on the right side of the screen. But since we're loading from the USB stick, we're going to touch the icon on the left side of the screen. And now it says to press the update after connecting the media containing the upgrade file. You can, at this point, insert the USB stick if you haven't done so already. We push on the update button, and now it is going to save the update file. You notice it says do not turn the main power off. Whenever you're doing a firmware update for anything, do not turn the power off while the firmware is being updated. The update will start to load. It goes through a percentage complete sign at the bottom. We're at 71% now. It hangs out there for a little while, and then it will go to 85% and finally 100%. Now we're at 85%. Now 100%. We're waiting for it to say update complete, and now it does. And so we can at this point turn off the ScanNCut and remove the USB stick with the update on it. Now that the update is complete, to verify that indeed the firmware was updated, turn the power back on the regular way without holding the load mat button. Click on the home screen and then the OK button to move the carriage and the mat. Click on the wrench and go to page 5. And there you see we are now at version 2.32, which is updated from the earlier version that we were at when we started this process, which was 2.01. So we have a successful firmware update, and we're ready now to use our ScanNCut to make some beautiful creations.